Welcome to Sustainable in the City, where Nashville sustainability champions take the spotlight. Join Urban Green Lab and the Nashville Department of Waste Services as we dive deep into the stories of everyday Nashvillians. We'll chat with your neighbors, coworkers, and fellow community members about the small sustainable actions that are making a big impact on Nashville. From reducing waste to planting trees, our guests will share their stories about the benefits, barriers, and motivators behind everyday choices. Tune in and be inspired by the power of individual action. This is Sustainable in the City.
Hey there, welcome to Sustainable in the City. My name is Allie Omens. I'm with the Nashville Department of Waste Services. We are a department of the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County. We educate and provide outreach to residents across Nashville to learn how to reduce, reuse, recycle, compost, and properly dispose of their waste.
And I am Karissa Hampton. I am the Assistant Director of Households with the Urban Green Lab. We are a Nashville-based nonprofit that teaches communities to live sustainably in all the places that we learn, work, and live. So if you haven't listened to our last episode, we actually had a guest, Leland Evans, who was talking to us about adopting a street, and his tip that he left off on was to really hone into your why, your purpose for living sustainably. And if you are a longtime listener, we actually had podcasts in the city. Allie and I were able to share our personal experiences, our sustainability journey from the way we grew up into, our careers within sustainability. And so we suggest you go back and give that a listen.
It's an oldie and a goodie.
Right.
And today, Chris, I'll pass it back to you because today we have a special guest of your organization here to join us for the episode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so today our special guest and our Urban Green Lab staff member, we have Sofia. Sofia, thank you so much for joining us in the studio today.
Thank you for having me.
And so let's start off with your story. We've heard, Allie and I's story. Can you share your personal sustainability journey up until now?
Yeah, so my name is Sofia, and I'm a Nashville native. I'm an immigrant who grew up in Antioch, and really I moved a lot with my parents and my family into different counties, Davidson and Rutherford, and went to so many schools. I think that experience led me to really be engaged in my community, and it got me interested in what my city is doing for my community. So I grew up going outdoors, and something that my family instilled in me was to go outdoors. And whether that was going out in a walk or walking our dogs or going out and camping, that's something that I grew up doing. Every summer we would go to camp with our church at the time, and being outdoors and being grateful for what the earth has to offer us already without having to do much. And as you know, with very little resources or money or time, just being outside was free and was accessible to us. And so where I worked, we didn't have much sustainability practices. And so that got me digging into the internet of what I can do in my workplace. And so I came across to Sustainable in the City webinars back in the pandemic in 2020. And so my first webinar was the bottles, jars, jugs episode. And it was just a good intro to hey, this is what Nashville is doing, and this is how you can practice it in your workplace, in your home, etc. And so that led to me watching every single episode. And then I think that following year you started Urban Green Lab Volunteers, and I joined that as well. So it's just a full circle moment of all of this just grew out of interest and out of me wanting to learn for myself, but also to learn and then share with my parents, share with my family members, with my entire community of hey, sustainability is actually already something we practice, but you just don't know to call it sustainability. And it's so accessible to us, and let's find more ways to make it more accessible to us. So yeah, that's also another part of my sustainable journey.
I love that. Thank you for mentioning that you listened to Sustainable in the City back.
Yes, I did.
It's the OG.
I've shared it so many times at work, but I'm just that is just how it got me to Urban Green Lab.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
And it also goes to show that, I mean, what we're trying to do with the podcast now is show that it really can be the everyday person taking some of these kinds of steps. And we've come so far as Sustainable in the City. Now, we invited you here to talk specifically about a really cool program you've been involved with called MyCity Academy. Can you tell us a little bit about what MyCity Academy is and how it relates to your sustainability journey?
Yeah, of course. So MyCity Academy is a free civic and leadership training program. It's offered by Metro Nashville, and it's for immigrants, refugees, Native individuals, or even individuals who are new to Nashville. And it hopes to empower them in learning about and participating in our city. And so we learn how our government works and how to become civically engaged, but also share these valuable resources that we're learning with our community. And so being able to take that back after we've learned and being able to take that back to our community.
That's awesome. And what got you interested in, joining MyCity Academy? How did you find out about it?
Well, I've always tried to stay engaged in my city, like literally in Nashville.
You can see why they named it that.
Yeah, exactly. And so at the time, I knew about the program, but I really didn't, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Unless you're working in government, I think you don't really know the ins and outs of government and how it works. And so I was interested in the program because my friend Jackie was a participant in it. And so now, lots of years later, she is now an alum and now leads the program at the mayor's office. And so with her big push of hey, you should join, I joined, and it's been a great time. And we've since graduated, but I still keep up with all of them. So it's been so good.
And something you said just really hits home for me as someone who works for Metro Nashville. There's so much that government does that you may not know unless you work in government. And it was really interesting to, as part of MyCity, I know that you all visited various Metro facilities and saw kind of some behind the scenes looks at things. And there are things that I even learned as part of seeing you all go through the MyCity process about how your home gets electricity, of course, on the recycling side, but and the natural resources you mentioned, having appreciation for those and what our city is doing to protect those.
Of course, yeah. That's really why I wanted to learn more, and from my own interest, now that I know a little bit more, I might not know everything.
I don't know everything.
Yeah. But I want to take it back to my community. So
yeah.
And I think what sparked my interest when, we were looking for the next guest to be on the podcast was just your excitement when you walked in after a session. Can you share, where the sessions were, what topics you covered in MyCity Academy?
Yeah, so there's 7 different sessions. They're held once a month. So each day we would be at a different location. And so we would talk about things from education, health and wellness, our infrastructure, safety and courts, transit was a big one. And the very first one was the history of Nashville. And we started that off at the Metro Courthouse. And then we came here, actually, at the Nashville Public Library. And we got a tour of both of those locations and just learning about Nashville government, its structure, and just the overview of the budget as well. Not really interested in budget conversations, but it was just interesting to learn that all that exists. And, you're everyday Nashvillian, you're like, and what is that? How does that apply to me, right? But it affects us so much and how our tax dollars are being used in our city. And so yeah, it was just so interesting to learn all of that. Like I said, every class was at a different location. And so we went to so many parts around town. And I think that was also interesting to be in these spaces that I would never have gone to if I wouldn't have been part of this program.
Right.
Yeah. Specifically thinking about the Metro budget, like you said, it impacts so much more than maybe the average resident realizes. What did learning about Metro's budget teach you about what it means to live sustainably in our city?
Yeah. Well, first, I think it's such an organized way of doing financials, I guess, in our city. And so you really get to see how the city is spending those funds. And so in order to connect it to sustainability, I think that is more so of like what we actually get to see being done in our city. And so with transit or having bike lanes or, things that, hey, I need a pothole fill in my neighborhood. How do I get that? And, who's actually paying for that? So yeah, a lot of these things, affect us, but we don't know to call it sustainability, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, sustainability is intersectional, not to use such a technical word, but it means so many different things to so many different people. So that's great.
So can you tell us a little bit more about the people around you in your cohort?
Yeah. So my understanding was that it offered every year under any mayor that was in Nashville. And so actually our current mayor, Freddie O'Connell, he was, I believe, in the first cohort.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's so cool. And he was actually there the first day that we were in session. And so it was cool to like also get to see and meet and like say hi to your mayor. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was cool. And then as well, like the current director of New Immigrants is Jackie, and she was a part of MyCity Academy back then. And so it's cool to like see that full circle of like, now we have, a MyCity Academy member is now the mayor, and a MyCity Academy member is now the lead of this program.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wonder what that means for me.
Next question. What does that mean for you?
I'm
Just kidding. So other than the mayor, who are some of the MyCity Academy participants?
Yeah. Well, everyday Nashvillians, really. There was teachers, business owners, leaders in the community, people who are a part already in our community. And so it was just really nice to get to know them. But honestly, I already knew a lot of them. And so that just goes to show, like, the people that are really committed are going to continue seeking these opportunities. And so for Metro government to create an opportunity like this, I think that was like really smart, to like continue to engage our community back. I know that there was a pause for the program, but now it's back, and this was the first cohort under Freddie O'Connell. So it was just really nice to like come back to it, and I knew that it existed, but it hadn't been offered in a while, and so I really wanted to take it now that it was offered. So yeah,
that's wonderful.
And did you make any lasting relationships with anybody you met in your cohort?
Yeah, so we started back in May and it ended in December, and so I was already I guess in this like sustainability world as like being my work. And so it was just so interesting to like really meet those individuals who are doing everyday Nashvillian things, and to then be able to connect them back to what I do and what my passions are. And so I got a lot of chances to share about Urban Green Lab and what we do and just sustainability as a whole, really. And so there's a lot of now good friends from the cohort of like that I had known before, but now like it just reinforces, our relationship and what we're doing in the community as well. So
awesome.
I mean, you sat through information about Metro's budget together, so that's got to be a bonding experience.
Yeah. I mean, and it's honestly, it wasn't all about budget. And I probably zoned out a little bit, but there were like really cool classes where we would go to, for example, the recycling facility. One example. To the water...
The water treatment.
Yeah, that one. Fun fact, you can drink your tap water. You can drink our tap water. And they showed us like a before and an after of the water. I was like, wow, come on. This is gold. Like, this is awesome.
Building that trust
Yeah.
and reaffirming, because if someone maybe lived somewhere else where the water wasn't safe to drink, and then now you know.
Yeah, exactly. And most of the people in my city are immigrants. And so they might have a language barrier to just accessing any resources in Nashville. And so I did like that the program provided translation services in every class. And so even that, like, being able to hear in your own native language what these resources are, I could see them like just light up. I speak Spanish, but even then, like, it was so cool to like receive that information in Spanish, you know? And so it was also, you know, an interesting way to incorporate our people and recognize them for who they are, and saying, this is also accessible to you, and how do we make it even more accessible? And just by knocking down that language barrier, just also opened it up to a lot of more people as well.
And I guess now I have a question. How were they able to do that? What other languages or what tools did they use to translate?
Yeah, so I do know that there was many other languages other than Spanish, but they provided actual interpreters. So they had like headphones, and everybody who needed the translation would have headphones in, and somebody would be speaking into the mic and just translating like on the spot. And so as the presenter from this, you know, Metro workplace would tell us about their organization and what they do, these individuals would hear what they're saying in real time.
That's awesome.
So impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That someone can do that.
Yeah. And I think this was the first time that they offered it like that.
Wow. Yeah. Very
awesome.
neat.
Yeah.
Sophia, you mentioned before all of the topics that were covered in My City. Going back to that, which of the sessions had the biggest impact on you and how you think about creating a sustainable city in Nashville?
Well, really the session where we went to the water plant and the recycling facility. I think being able to see it in action is when you learn, and when you're like, oh, that's how it's done, you know? There is so much information that you gather just by looking, just by seeing it. And so you don't know what you don't see, is what they say, right? And so I feel like that being in those spaces, being in those rooms where it's people have these jobs and they get up, go to work, and they do these jobs, but everyday Nashvillian might not know what that looks like, really. And so just being in the room where it happens, I think that just like impacted me. And I missed the transit class because I was out of town, but I heard, and everybody in the cohort was just like, wow, that was the most impactful. So I hate to have missed it, but they actually rode the WeGo buses and they rode bikes and traveled around our city. And so that also, to be, you know, we live in a car city, and you have to have a car to move around most of the time. And so to know that a bus and a bike is accessible to you, and you can actually use it in parts of the city. And so being able to say, oh, I really didn't think about using a bus or using a bike to get to work, or to get to, you know, drop off my kids, or to go to the grocery store, or whatever that looks like. Being able to like see that and use it, because other than a program like this where you're exposed to it, you might not get to go to it. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm so glad that as part of My City, they bring you to, of course, the recycling facility and the water treatment plant. And we try, as our department, to offer a few open houses throughout the year. Want to shout those out real quick, that we tend to do a recycling facility open house in the month of March and the month of November each year, around Global Recycling Day and America Recycles Day, as just a way to celebrate the recycling holidays and bring people out. And like you said, Sophia, to show people recycling in action, because it is very different going and seeing it, and seeing that there are people, like I find that people are often surprised that there are people that work on the sorting line to separate some of the recycling. And
Exactly.
anyway, when you see it in person, it just makes a whole lot of difference.
Yeah, and it makes you think, oh, I should separate, because then this creates more work for them. And so when you go about it with empathy and with like kindness of like, I don't want to create more work for them. Yes, it's their job, but if I could do a little bit more while, separating my recycling, that's so much better in the long run. Because we were in the facility and they were telling us about like instances where the machine got stuck so many times because of things that weren't supposed to be in like, for example, your recycling bin. And
like
so
plastic bags.
Exactly. Yeah. And so just to see that, I was just like in shock of like, you're right. We shouldn't. And we do, but we shouldn't. And so that can help us next time when we're, putting something in that recycling bin.
Yeah. Heck yeah.
That's awesome. And you mentioned not being able to attend the transit session. Were there any other challenges that you faced, or was it difficult to attend, sessions in addition to working a full-time job and just life in general?
Yeah, I will say that it was pretty flexible and accessible to participate in this program. It is a 7-month long program, and so it's once a month. So I feel like that's doable. But it was in the morning, so from 9 to, I think it was 3 p.m. And so like you said, I did have to miss work. So I'm grateful that I have a job that was, open for me to participate in that. But I know like many of our immigrant communities might not have that opportunity to miss your job to go to this program. And so I think they were talking about opening it up for an evening sessions or even on weekends. So that could have been, right now for myself, it wasn't a barrier, but I could see that being a barrier for so many other people there that I did see like were there in the beginnings and then just trickled down of not being able to attend during the last few sessions. I would also say like it was every session was at a different location. So everybody was using, driving to the location. And so maybe like the barrier could be of why not carpool or even like take public transportation to meet at these locations or like get dropped off or something like that. I think I could see that being a barrier. I would say, at least for me, it was very accessible, but I know the privilege that I have in this city. And just like I said, with the language too, like I know it is not for me a barrier, but for others it is. And so those could be changes that could help the program in the future.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Were there any parts of the program or things that you were learning about in Metro processes that either relate to sustainability or otherwise that just felt really hard to grasp? Any barriers there?
Yeah. There's a lot of nuances that, because this program is directed towards the new Americans and immigrants of Nashville, there's a lot of nuances that we might not understand when we talk about government and when we have conversations in this like academic space more so. I think that was a barrier there. But again, I think being able to break it down and see exactly like what does it mean to have a council member and how do you reach out to them? And so a lot of that, even for myself, I've been engaged in the community for so long, and that just is who I am and how I grew up. But I know like other people in this cohort might not have been, and so they might not know that they can reach out to their council member and ask for help or do any, find any resources that they may need. So I think maybe that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that all makes sense. And I appreciate that it sounds like Jackie, as the leader of MyCity, did an excellent job at trying to break down those barriers and making sure that MyCity feels like a program that is truly catering to be inclusive and understand where people are coming from. So
yeah, of course. Yeah. And I mean, being her friend too, like I know the work that she put into it, but just as an outsider too, of like getting to be a participant in a program, knowing that like, hey, this is not working, let's pivot. And I saw a lot of that. The very first classes or sessions were more so of like somebody coming up and presenting and sharing. And maybe it was a lot of information for some of us, especially for those that, don't get those nuances of the English language. And so being able to, okay, let's pause. Let's break this down. Really what this means to you as an everyday Nashvillian. What does that mean to you, and how can you use these resources for the future?
Yeah. Awesome. Sophia, bringing us around to motivators or motivation for why you joined MyCity. You mentioned this a little bit in your introduction as to your sustainability journey, but what keeps you motivated to stay engaged and push for sustainability in our city now that you've gone through MyCity?
Yeah, I would say like the people behind me, the people that I have like counting on me, my community really. As a immigrant Latina, like I feel like I have a lot of responsibility, and so because I've always been engaged, I've always made sure that my engagement wasn't in vain and not just serving myself. And so I think also what motivates me is that I know what it looks like. Like I've been able to travel and within the United States, like it is possible. There are cities that like have sustainable practices, whether that's just like in transportation or providing a separate bin from your trash. And so I know it's possible, and I think that if I'm in Nashville, I know it could get done here as well. And so because I know it's possible, I live in Nashville, and I want the place where I live to be sustainable. And because I call Nashville home, I want my home to provide that accessibility to those who enter it.
It's a beautiful sentiment.
Yeah,
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah,
I know that's kind of a personal thing, asking about your motivation, but it's nice to hear.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's very personal to me because it's something that I know it is just, that I know that this conversation is not just for the few. It's for everybody. It should be for everybody. And so it's something that like I'm so passionate about that I got a job in it, you know? Right. And so, yeah, I think even if you are interested in it, go and do it. Like follow that passion, because it's something that it's not just for you, it's for everybody else like that you're carrying on your shoulders. And so especially this program that is tailored to the immigrant community, to new Nashvillians, we carry a lot of people behind us. And so I think that too, of like being able to bring that concept, because it's such a vague concept of sustainability, right. Breaking it down and saying, hey, it's actually for you too.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's experience is so different, and so how do you plan to use what you've learned to promote sustainability in areas like transit or housing or education?
Yeah. Well, I would say like I have been doing this. You know, I already have. And for example, you mentioned transit. Last year, we know the transit referendum was on the ballot. And so I was talking to my family that can vote and that can, you know, go and act on it. And it was, you know, it was very basic, providing sidewalks, providing bike lanes, providing the basic necessity that a city needs to move around. And so talking to them, having a conversation with those individuals, they were like, you're right. Why don't we already have that already? And so when they got to the ballot box, they just simply checked yes. And so we've seen like these conversations lead to action, and it leads to like it passed, you know? And so I think that too, like that motivates me to just have a conversation with the people around me and leading by example instead of saying, hey, you need to vote for this because right? Saying, actually, you use it, right? You would use it if you had it available to you, right? And also just because I would say, like, I want the best for my community because I live here. And so I think that should be, like, how we move through it as well.
So, Sophia, it sounds like you've listened to Sustainable in the City before, both webinar format and podcast format. Yeah. So you know that we like to finish these episodes off with a tip from our guest to our listeners. What is the tip you'd like to share about living sustainably?
Yeah, I would say drink your tap water. At least in Davidson County, they do a really good job of purifying it and of being able to, like, when it gets to your home and you open your faucet, like, you can drink that water. It is really, really nice to have that available to you. And so that's something that I came back home and told my mom about it, and she was in shock because she's been, buying and purchasing plastic bottled waters. And so for her to say, oh, I don't need to spend my money anymore on a basic necessity such as water. It's really nice to, like, come back and teach something that you've learned. So simple as that. But also, I think just, like, being a human in Nashville, a couple of things, I wrote down a list of a couple of things that, our listeners can take away and can practice on their own. And so these are things that I do and that, like, have helped me. So I'll go down the list and we'll see. If it sticks, it sticks. Freeze your compost. I collect my compost in my kitchen, and then I put it in the freezer. And so that it doesn't stink. It doesn't take up much space. And then once that little bucket is full, then I take it to my compost outside. So if you have the ability of composting in your backyard, freeze it first so that it's not as sticky. I also have a bin or, like, a bucket where I put a lot of different things, either that, like, I got gifted and I'm not going to use, or things that, you're not going to use, but they're not trash, if you know what I mean. And with that, I want to plug in Turnip Green Creative Reuse. They are just a phenomenal organization. And so anything that I have that I feel like I'm not going to use, I donate to them. But then when I am planning an event, I love to, like, host different events at my house and just, like, with my family. I go to them first and I see if they have any kind of resources or items that I can get. And it's at, you donate, you pay what you can by donations. And so it's really nice to go to them and to have that organization in Nashville to do so. So things that I've gotten so far from them, like, for example, birthday cards. Mm-hmm. I don't buy birthday cards anymore. And I love to give out birthday cards and write my feelings to my family. And so, I get birthday cards from them. And I will say, like, their birthday cards are fire. Like, really, really good. They're really, like, quirky and fun. And also, like, people have lots of things in their home that they can give to Turnip Green. And so I'm always there trying to search new things that I'm going to use, specifically for, like, my, like, events that I host. Like this past time, I hosted a vision board with my cousins, and I went to Turnip Green. and they had magazines, they had scissors, they had glue, like literally every supply that I was going to need if I didn't have it already. So anyways, enough of that.
Super cool.
Yeah. Also, shop your home. We have a lot of things in our home nowadays, and sometimes we just look at it and it's just sitting there forever. If we move it around, it might have a new home, you know what I mean? And so shop your home, like, look for things that are not working in that space and put them somewhere else. Or if you're not using it yourself, you can gift it to some family or friend. Another thing that I do when I go to my family gatherings is I bring my own Tupperware. Mm-hmm. Because there's always leftovers, and our family always wants to give us food to take over. And so, like, for example, my mother-in-law, she loves to cook, and she's such a great cook, and I love her cooking. And so I go to her house with Tupperware, empty Tupperware already, and I come back with full Tupperware of food. So that's also something of, like, make it something that you do so that others can see that you're doing it and that it's easy. So I always say, like, lead by example.
Those are awesome tips. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. So
you gave us multiple for the price of one.
Yeah.
And so what I'm hearing is that we need to lead by example, right?
Yeah, for sure.
If we knew better, we'd do better.
Exactly. And also that, like, eliminates the judgment too of, like, if my mom sees me doing something, then she will be most likely to do it too, versus like, hey mom, you need to do this. Right? Yeah. So I think that's an easy next step for anybody who wants to participate and be active in like your sustainability journey, if you will. But yeah.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Sofia, for being here with us.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. This is great.
We really enjoyed this conversation. And for today, we're closing out, but listeners can reach us at sitcnashville@gmail.com. We release episodes on the third Tuesday of every month. So until then, we'll see y'all next time.
Thanks for tuning in to Sustainable in the City. Sustainable in the City is produced by Urban Green Lab and the Nashville Department of Waste Services, a department of the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County. Recording assistance is provided by the Nashville Public Library's Studio NPL team. Our theme song is produced by Draped Apes. Subscribe in all the places you listen to podcasts. To learn about trash, recycling, and composting services for Nashville residents, visit wasteservices.nashville.gov. For more tips on how to live sustainably, follow Urban Green Lab on social media at Urban Green Lab or online at urbangreenlab.org. Join us next time for more stories about small sustainable actions that are making a big impact on Nashville.